Well, thank you so much for joining. I really wanted to speak to you about the most recent Transformers film, Rise of the Beast. And before I sort of dive into it, I just sort of want to give you guys a little bit of a context of how much I have appreciated both of your work over the years, working on different films, like Air, Argo, then Michael Bay films like Transformers and Pain and Gain. So truly great to be, enjoying both of your work over the years.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Great. I would love to. Normally, this is the first time I've had like two guests. It's always been one. So this is going to be something a little bit of different. I always like to sort of get started with the background of each individual as to how they got into the industry and what their story and journey is. So whoever sort of wants to take on that, and then followed by the other, that'd be super cool.
Yeah, I'll go first. Okay. Um, I went to film school in Philadelphia, and fell in love with editing there, and came out here to try and be an editor, and you know, got jobs, first non-union jobs, and then got into the union and worked my way up as an apprentice, and then and worked on films like I got to work on The Breakfast Club and Firestarter and some really old films, and then I got a chance to work as Michael Kahn's first assistant, who's been Steven Spielberg's editor for 50 years at this
Yep.
point, I think.
Yep.
And I worked for him for 4 years, and he sort of trained me to be an editor, in how to cut, how to handle the politics, how to think about scenes and drama, and he really was like the world's greatest graduate school. And then I was able to I worked on a film called Alive with him, and I was the first assistant. And he knew it was time for me to start cutting on my own, so he moved me up on that film to share credit with him. And then he left after the director's cut, and I finished the film with the director. And I've been cutting since then. And my fourth film I think I cut was Heat. And after that happened, things started to really take off for me. Um, and so I think I've worked every day since, I'm pretty sure.
I'll come back to some of your films in a second. I just want to get ahead to it. Joel, would love to hear your background and how you got
Um,
into films.
well, I was kind of grew up in the film industry because my dad was in the film industry. He was a illustrator and a conceptual painter, and he worked in the '60s on movies like Tora 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 and the original Doctor Dolittle. He worked for Disney for a while, so I kind of knew the business a little bit, and I was in the business. But I went to school for radio TV because I thought I might want to get into radio TV. And I started doing music videos for my friends because I had video cameras and things like that. And I went out and shot and directed and made these music videos for my friends and my friends' bands. I had a bunch of friends that were in bands. And I decided that I didn't really like going as much. I didn't like going out there and shooting them and setting the cameras up. My favorite thing was to come back and do the editing and I really enjoyed that. And I decided that's what I want to do. I want to be an editor. And I was pretty young at the time. And then since my dad was in the movie industry, I did some work for him. I met some people through him. In fact, I met Billy one day. I think I was still in college. I can't remember. He was an apprentice editor, and I wanted to meet the editor and I want to meet the team. And I went in. What movie was that? Jojo Dancer, I
Yeah, I
think.
was JoJo Dancer, Your Life is Calling, which I was an
Yeah.
apprentice. And I met you and your dad way back. I can't
Yeah.
remember what year it was.
And Don and I went and met Don Cameron, who was the editor, and I saw his setup, and I thought, and that's when I really was definitely getting interested in editing. And then I just started just working my way up. I started out working on trailers and TV spots for different independent trailer companies, and this is a little bit of a longer story, but I learned the Avid because people weren't really using it in features. They're using it more in commercials and music videos.
Mhm.
So I learned how to use the Avid Media Composer, which is a editing system that
Yep.
is the standard today. And so I started training some other editors on the Avid. In fact, Avid Technologies hired me to train editors. So I met a few editors. I met this guy, Sidney Walensky, who hired me to be his slash trainer assistant, and that was for a TV movie of the week. And then from there, I went and I met Conrad Boff, who was a pretty big time editor who's done a lot of
Hmm.
features. Started working for him, then I started working for this guy Chris Levinson, and then I just started moving my way up the rank. We did a lot of Tim Burton movies, and I went from being an assistant to an additional editor on the Tim Burton movies, and then um, and then eventually I got my own movie to cut, and over the years, all of the producers and directors I've met came back, that I've met came back to me, and they were interested that I was editing. So then they hired me to edit some of their movies. One of them was Joel Silver. One of them was Neil Moritz, who does all the Fast and Furious movies, and Jerry Bruckheimer as well. Once he heard I was been editing, he called me in to do some work for him. And then Michael Bay called me to do some work for him, and I did because I had done as an additional editor, I had done Pearl Harbor and Armageddon. So he called me to do the first Transformers, which I couldn't do. I think I turned him down because I had something else, and
Hmm.
which, maybe that was a mistake. I don't know. But then I did the second and the third Transformers after that, and then been working ever since, as Billy said, every day, every.
Wonderful. So, Billy, can I call you Billy or is it William or?
Sure, sure, yeah, yeah, everybody does.
Yeah. First of all, after a long time, it's so funny you mentioned those three names, Breakfast Club, Alive, and Heat. I had seen those films when they first came out. In fact, Heat was something that I studied as part of film school myself. But all those three films, and Alive, I think, was directed by Frank Marshall, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So different from each other, but so well put together. And especially, I think Breakfast Club seems to be the easiest film to cut, but in my view, I think it's probably the most challenging one among the three titles that you said. At least for me, the way I look at it, because it's difficult to move that story forward. Being in just in a school essentially over a course of a day, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So,
Yeah, they were
just wanted
in
to.
Saturday detention for the day.
Yeah, yeah. Just wanted to mention that. I mean, very different films, but very well put together.
Well, let me just
And
make it. I didn't edit The Breakfast Club, but Dee Dee Allen did, who is a
okay,
legendary there. And I was the apprentice, and it was a big, I was so charged up about working
got it.
for her. Just cut Reds, and she cut Dog Day Afternoon, and Little Big
Yep.
Man, Bonnie and Clyde, and she's was a legendary editor and a legendary personality. I mean, she had a very large personality, and you know would break all, like, would say, we do edit things, and like they would, she would go, well, they say you can't do this because it's against the rules, and then she would, whatever it was, and then do it anyway and laugh because she just thought she was a very rebellious type person. And even though I was the apprentice on that film, I get more people react more about that than anything I've ever done. Like any feature I've cut myself or whatever, anything. I work in the Breakfast Club, everybody gets really excited. I mean, it really is a movie that has withstood the test of time, and it was hard to edit. There was the first cut was like 3.5 hours long, and there was a tremendous amount of footage and a tremendous amount of improv and a lot of, then they were shooting on film, so the
Yeah.
magazines were 10 minutes long, and almost every take was 10 minutes long. You just run the magazine out and then, and then load up again. So it was there were, and she really cut that film by herself too. I mean, John Hughes was there every so often, but that was Dee Dee.
Yeah.
She was incredible.
And
So it makes
as much as I appreciate that, and thank you for that correction. As much as I don't ever want to see it, but I'd be curious to see if that original 3.5 hour cut can be turned into a mini series. Like, nowadays everything is a series. It'd be fascinating to see. But yeah, I mean, it's a great film. And then Joel, I
I
mean,
actually had
Armageddon.
I actually had the 3.5 hour cut.
Oh, do
John
you really?
Hughes' wife and me
Oh,
when we were
wow.
packing up the show, I said to Dee, it was all in VHS, and I asked Dee, can I keep this? I kept the first cut and I kept like the final cut with before the visual effects and before the real music was in. I have them on VHS, and I think I've had them transferred to DVD as well. And as far as I know, I think John Hughes' wife has a copy, and I have a copy. Which
Wow.
no one knows until now, I guess.
Well, that I mean, that's gold, right? Like to have something like that in your possession and of such a great
Yeah.
film as well. And John Hughes was an amazing filmmaker. And Joel, your earlier work was Armageddon, I think you mentioned.
Mhm.
I You worked with Richard Francis,
Richard
right?
Francis Bruce. No,
Yeah.
Richard Francis Bruce was on he wasn't on Armageddon. No, he was on The Rock.
I
He
thought he
did
was
The
on
Rock.
Armageddon as well. Maybe
There were
I'm
a lot of
mistaken.
editors. I don't think he was one of the editors on.
Okay, okay. Because I spoke to him a few times about Shawshank, Green Mile, and The Rock. And IMDb I think says to Armageddon. I didn't speak to him about Armageddon, but I remember the credits. So that's IMDb sometimes is not accurate about
Mhm.
information. But working with Tim Burton as working on his films, not as an editor but assistant editor. What did you
Mhm.
learn working on films like his? Like they're just completely different films, right? Like he has a very unique touch and
Yeah,
approach to it.
I started out as assistant editor, but then toward the later films I did with him, I was an additional editor and also got an editor credit on Sleepy Hollow. The thing I learned, the best thing about working for Tim, or what I really learned about working for Tim, is just how he's got an amazing eye for design, and every single shot, if you look at any of his movies, every
Hmm.
single shot is a beautiful, well designed image. And he also comes from animation. So
Yeah.
if his movies, you can't really tell, but there's not a whole lot of coverage, and there's not a whole lot. He doesn't do a whole lot of takes either. He's just, what he'll do is he'll do a wide shot and say, okay, from this line to this line, and then he'll go to a medium shot and another a medium shot, this line to this line. It's basically will have very much how animation works. And the editor I worked with, Chris Levinson, would say, "Oh, just cut the slates off and then just put the scenes together." And it wasn't really like that, but it was very, very close to doing that. It was uh well planned out, well designed. And what happens with Tim is you kind of get the gist of his style, and you just go with it, and the rest of the crew kind of follows along too, like the production designer, the costume designers, the DP, everybody just kind of knows he's got a very unique style that
Mm.
you put a frame up of one of his movies, you'll say that's a Tim Burton movie. And I kind of realized that after the first couple of movies I did with him, and I thought, that's super. I felt really privileged to be working for a guy like that, because there's very few directors like that. There's like maybe, Steven Spielberg. There's some of the classic directors from the 40s and 50s where you go, oh yeah, that's a John Ford movie, or
Yeah.
you know that's a David Lynch movie. So anyway, it was really I felt really privileged to be starting my career, because Mars Attacks was the first Tim Burton movie I did, and that was my second or third feature ever. So and I just felt really privileged to be starting out that way.
I gotta tell you, Mars Attacks is one of my favorite alien films ever made. It's one of the best movies to date. It's a totally different film, but it's typical Tim Burton style. So, wonderful film to work on for sure.
Yeah, my son used to come into the cutting room, and I used to show him scenes when he was 3, and he'd run around the house shooting Martians all day. Hopefully, I mean, he's older now, and he seems okay. Hopefully, it didn't ruin his childhood, but I think he's okay.
One of the things you mentioned about was coverage, right? And that's something I noticed in Transformers: Rise of the Beast. The you talked about wider angles, and I hadn't seen it in theaters because honestly, when it first came out, I thought, here we go, another Transformers movie. That was my initial reaction. But I actually sat down with my kids because I had heard it was really good, and I was very, very impressed by the way it came out. And coverage was something I really appreciated, and I've sort of mentioned this over and over again on this podcast to different people I've spoken to, is that nowadays tighter shots because they hide certain things and cutting back and forth really is a very common thing, and I didn't find that in this film. Was that something that you guys worked with Steven, the director, on, or was it more like both of you together? What was that process like? Was it a lot of coverage on the other, like, in tighter shots as well, or was that what you got?
Do you want to go, Billy?
No, you go, sir.
Well, I would say coverage for most of the work that I did on Rise of the Beast, because I came in, Billy started it and I came in and finished it, and it was done with the visual effects and the animation, you know. So what we did is we saw what we had, and then if we needed additional shots, or we needed a wider shot, or we needed to tell the story with a slightly different angle, we would get a previs artist to design the shot for us, and then we would cut that in. Steven, the director, has a pretty good eye, and he had a pretty good sense of what angle we needed to get to tell the story. But a lot of it was told, you know, later on in animation. A lot of the pieces were put together later on. Like the entire third act was all done
Mm,
post the principal photography. So it we ended up, you know, trying a lot of things, doing a lot of experimenting with storyboard artists and with previs artists, and then we that's how we came up with the patterns that we used to cut the at least the final battle.
I mean, Matsu Picchu, he was very, obviously, first of all, the robots are huge, and Matsu Picchu is such a, cinematic place that he did get a lot of coverage there, especially, to, set the place and the environment, and, get a vibe for where they were, and Michael Bay as well, you get, I don't think anybody shoots more coverage than Michael.
that's true.
It's shocking how much for coverage you can get. But they both directors really pay a lot of attention to the environment, because they're shooting in, both those movies, or all those movies. I mean, they shoot all over the world in these incredible places. So they're very, they're both directors very cognizant of getting, big wide shots to, let the audience enjoy the place as well as the story.
Right. Okay. And both of you guys never worked simultaneously, right? It was more like one came in and then the other.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
Yeah. Like,
And
right. Yeah.
Like weeks, you know, maybe 2 weeks after he left, I
Yeah.
came.
I
and that, sorry, go on.
I had a obligation on another movie, and
Yep.
originally the film was going to come out. The Transformers was going to come out June of 22, right? It came out June
Mm-hmm.
23.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep. Yep.
and yeah. So I was on to then, and then it was an unmakeable schedule, based on this, getting the story right, getting the visual effects done. So they pushed it a year, because those movies always come out basically the same time, same part of the time of the year. So they pushed a year. So I was obligated to do another film. So I had to leave, and that's when Joel came on.
But
Was it?
you said that we never worked together, but we kind of did, because after I came on, I was in constant contact with Billy, and I would, he knew the history of everything, and he knew, he had done the first cut. So then I would ask him, about other cuts that he did, and I'd ask him about what the director thought of certain things. So we were not physically sitting in the same room editing together, but we were collaborating even after he was off the movie.
When you say collaborating, it wasn't like he had Avid on his system and you did, and you were collaborating over that, or was it just more like from a story standpoint?
Or like a form of, I would call him and he knew the scenes,
Mm.
and I would say, I would ask him things like, you know, for example, let me think of one. The scene when Mirage is in the warehouse and he's talking
Right.
to Noah for the first time. I would just say, what's the history of this? I mean, this is how you've left it. Is there a reason why, Optimus comes in at this time, or is there a reason why, you know, things happen in a certain way? And he knew it because he had been working with it, and he cut it, and I just came on. So that type of thing. And then we would talk about the story, and then I think you saw a couple cuts too, Billy, while we were, afterwards. And
Along
I
the
mean,
way, yeah. I mean,
wasn't a
Joel and
lot.
I have worked together on what, how many, two or three of the Transport other ones?
Uh, just
Three,
Transformers 3. That's the only
just
other
three?
one. No, yeah.
Oh, wow. Um, and, so and we've been friends since then. And so it was very comfortable, and
Mm.
like the car, like Noah chasing around in the port in Mirage when he first meets Mirage, there were, Joel would call, why was this taken out? Why was this, why is it this way? Why was it so it was able to sort of, it gave him, a lot of backstory. So he knew why things were the way they were. And then at the same time, he was able to have a fresh point of view on the film. So to the film's credit, he was able to there were some jokes and things and funny moments that for some reason Steven was shying away from, but then went back in the film because Joel had a fresh look at it and, was able to restore some of that comedy that, because you sort of get, when you're doing it and sit in front of the Avid, sometimes you get tunnel vision and you sort of
Mm.
go with the flow. And then Joel was able to come in and have a totally fresh point of view. And I think it really made the film way better than it would have been.
Right. And working with Steven for both of you, he's worked on Creed. I think Creed's second one or the third one. Much. I think
Like
the
a
second
second
one.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Creed 2.
What? I mean, both of you have worked with different directors like Michael Bay, Ben Affleck, and then working with Steven Caple on this film. How was that different working with him? Because he has his own vision, right? Every director comes with a different bag of tricks.
Yeah, he wanted to do his own take on Transformers, and he, in terms of robots and visual effects and humans fighting, alongside of robots, and he had a learning curve. There was a learning curve for him to kind of catch up, and I think he did pretty good. Um, but he was always pushing for his own, the robots have a little bit different design. I don't know if you've
Yeah.
noticed from the
Yep.
other two
Yep.
movies. And he was pushing for different music. He was pushing for more kind of the casting is completely different than Michael Bay would do. Michael Bay would have some, half naked girls in it or whatever. No. But anyway, no, I'm kidding. But anyway,
Not really.
no, but that was the one thing he brought to it. He did bring his own, he kind of, he wanted his own take on it. And, and he wasn't that experienced with big visual effects movies. And I hand it to him. He really was, pushing and pushing to make it, kind of his movie, not a Michael Bay lookalike movie, so, and I think he did. I think it doesn't look like one of the Michael Bay, directed movies. It looks completely different and it feels different too.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I go on, please, Bill.
I was just saying he really did instill it with his own personality. And the thing was always amazing to me, he knew the Transformers lore like backwards and forwards. I mean, he would refer to stuff, and this was the fourth one I've done, and he knew the stuff about Transformers that I never had any inkling of. I mean, he really did the homework and was able to draw on, the history of it, the lore, all the comics and all the cartoons and the movies. And so he was able to instill his own take on it, but stay true to the series, stay true to this, all the different versions of the series. I think it was a really good combination. So he was able to leave his stamp on it, but still at the same time, it was true to the history of the franchise.
Right, and I so much agree that his voice is in the film. I mean, I don't know anything about his, background in terms of what he went through as an individual, but you could see the amount of time the film takes to set up is a very rare thing to see nowadays. And I really appreciated that. And you could see there was this own life elements in there, somehow hidden in there, and you can pick on them. And I really felt that. And even the robot design, I noticed that with Optimus Prime, it just felt like very retro, at least some of the shots that, and again, I mean, you guys said it already, but I was just so glad that it wasn't trying to mimic Michael Bay. Otherwise, they would have just crashed and failed miserably because he just stuck with his own voice.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
think I think
go ahead.
also the comedy too. It does have a different type of comedy. I mean, I know the movies that I did, two and three, was all Shia, and it was all kind of this kind of almost, I don't want to say slapsticky, but kind of a little bit more broad comedy. And I think the comedy that we brought into Rise of the Beast is more character driven. Like Pete Davidson really, really brought Mirage to life, and he's really funny. And that is something that Steven brought to it that is separated from a Michael Bay Transformers movie for sure.
And I think in terms of comedy, aside from the word slapstick, I find that with Michael Bay films, especially the Transformer ones, I absolutely admire his work. But in terms of comedy, sometimes it becomes to a point where you can't watch it with family. And with this one, I could sit with my kids and watch it, and there wasn't anything like that. Which again, it goes back to the way the films used to be in the '80s and the '90s in terms of comedy and humor.
Well, did you see Pain and Game with your family?
Nah, no, that I did not. That I did not.
Definitely for kids.
I don't think my kids have seen any Michael Bay films aside from the first Transformers. That was it.
Yeah.
That's it. They really want to see The Rock and the Crimson Tide, but I'm like, not yet. Not yet.
Yeah.
But
Oh, okay.
go on, sorry, Billy.
I was saying, how old are they?
They're 13 and 11, but I
Oh,
mean,
they're getting old.
yeah, I think I showed them Saving Private Ryan, which I thought was a very, from a historical standpoint, and I'd warned them like it's going to be very gutty and violent, not because it's
Right.
gutty and violent, but because there's emotional attached to it. So they were able to sit through it and they were able to watch it and watch it. But you know, going forward, I mean, you guys have worked on Air recently and Cocaine Beer, and what sort of plans do you guys have ahead in terms of what's coming up? Are you working on something that you can talk about, or right now is there a little off
I've
time?
been picketing. I'm kidding. I have.
I know you're not.
There's not. There's not. I'm working on something now. I don't know if I could. I guess it's okay. I'm helping out a little bit on the Transformers animated feature. So just helping out a little bit on that, which is in progress now. It's like they've been working on it for the last 2 years. But yeah, there's not a whole lot happening. I've got a couple
Yeah.
projects that were supposed to start in October, and everything's been pushed to January now
Yeah.
because of the strike.
I was 12 days into, I was directing my first feature.
Ah,
And I was 12 days into a 31-day schedule, and we got shut down by picketers. So that's on hold. And, this is Ben Affleck's new company, Artist Equity, who also did Air as their first
yeah.
movie. We were supposed to be the second movie, but now we won't be. But so we're on hold with that until the strike's over. And meanwhile, I've been recutting a documentary that the company is doing about the making. Jennifer Lopez has a new album coming out, and she made an hour-long, long-form video based on each of the songs, sort of strung together with some dialogue scenes, and it's these gigantic visual effects, and it's actually really good. And they did a behind-the-scenes a documentary about the making of that video, which sort of also tells sort of the history of Ben and Jennifer's relationship a little bit. And it's actually shockingly really good and really fun and kind of emotional. So I've been recutting that for the last kind of 5, 6 weeks, and which I'm just happy to be. It's actually been the first documentary I've ever worked on as an editor, and I've consulted on a couple, but never really cut on any. So it's been really a learning experience, and I'm just happy to have a job because so few people are
Yeah.
working right now. I mean, I'm just thrilled to be working, and working for Ben is always fun. We've known each other for 17 years at this point, so it's pretty comfortable, and we always try and make it fun.
I was going to ask you because not directing, sorry, editing feature documentaries is a completely different beast. I mean, I direct documentaries, feature documentaries, but I've co-edited two of my own, and it's a completely different beast. Going from that narrative world to the documentary world, despite the fact that you served as a consultant, how challenging was that?
The beginning, it was kind of scary. Luckily, they kept a couple of the editors on that had been on the film who have way more experience than me. Um, but at a certain point, it is really figuring out what you're kind of writing, as you know. I
The
mean,
story,
you're kind of
exactly.
writing a film as well as editing it. And once I sort of figured out what the story wanted to be, because I think the original cut was just really off base. It was very repetitive and sort of dry and not very fun and not really very interesting. And there's 450 hours of material, and a lot of that material was unmined. So we found a lot of really wonderful stuff, and figured out what the story wanted to be, and then figured out the structure, and then we've gone in and really tuned up each scene. And I've had so much experience cutting sort of a lot of verite footage because of working with Paul Greengrass and Catherine Bigelow.
Hmm.
And actually, my film too is shot that way. Um, it's the editing of it was that part of it was actually a little easier for me because I had so much experience cutting with sort of unconventional footage and unconventional camera work. So that was actually came sort of second nature, but the overwhelming amount of ways you can go. There's no script, so you can go down these rabbit holes. You find because find all this footage that like, oh my God, look at this little storyline, and you go down these long rabbit holes, and sometimes it's worth putting into film, and sometimes it's not. So it really is overwhelming in a way. But luckily for me, I have a really good team with me, and so it's made it a little more comfortable because they're more experienced than me. But I really enjoyed it actually. Now that I've been in it for like 6 weeks, I really am having fun. At the beginning, it was just it was really frightening actually.
Yeah.
But now I feel like I sort of got thrown into the deep end of the pool because it was like we need a cut in 4 weeks, and you've never cut a documentary. Okay, go. You know. But now I feel pretty comfortable, and I'm having a great time.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that the rabbit hole and the different ways of tackling a story, and it's challenging and it's hard, but at the same time, I was telling this to somebody. One of the things I love about storytelling, documentary directing, is that I don't, it scares the hell out of me. How am I going to do this? But it also excites the hell out of me that I'm going to do this, and it's a very tough. It's a tough situation, and you have to figure out and navigate how to get there. And this poster right behind Citizen of Moria, one of the films that I did, the first 2/3 of the film took 2 years to shoot and edit, and the last act took 2.5 years because the story kept shifting. It just
Right.
kept going back and forth. So I completely empathize with that. Um, Joel, you mentioned Transformers feature film, the animation one. Is it something similar to what Spider-Verse or Ninja Turtles in terms of animation is, or is that something
Yeah,
you can't
yeah,
discuss? Is
it's
it?
fully animated Transformers movie. Yeah,
But is
yeah.
it similar type of like comic kind of a feel? That are you aware of that, or you're not allowed to talk about that? I'm
I
just
don't
kind of
know if
curious.
I don't know if I signed an NDA, so I don't know how
Okay,
much I.
got
Sorry.
it. No, that's okay. I just love the new form of animation that Spider-Verse has sort of
Yeah,
initiated, and
Spider-Verse is the I've done work with Phil Lord and Chris Miller. We did 21 Jump Street together, and then I did a TV series called The After Party, and then they produced Cocaine Bear. So they're very talented, and they have their vision is really uh, it's great. They have a great visionary sense, and yes, they asked me to work on Spider-Verse. I couldn't do it. I was doing something else, but that would have been fun too to do that.
yeah. Billy, you said you're directing your first feature. Are you allowed to talk about it? What it is about? What's the
Yeah,
premise?
sure. It's a film called Unstoppable. It's based on this guy named Anthony Robles, who is a college wrestler. He wrestled for Arizona State and won the national championship in 2011, and he was born missing his right leg. So he competed against able-bodied people, but the story is more about his overcoming an incredibly difficult life. Abusive stepfather, growing up in poverty, having to turn down the only scholarship he got offered to wrestle because he won the high school national championship and only got one scholarship offer because of having one leg, and he had to turn that down, work three jobs to stay at ASU to protect his mother, and so it's the story of him overcoming all these challenges and ending up being a champion. And Anthony is quite an extraordinary person. He's only 34 years old, and
Wow.
he's quite an extraordinary guy. He's a motivational speaker now, and he works for ESPN doing commentary for wrestling, and also as a Nike athlete. And and we had a really wonderful cast with Jennifer Lopez playing Anthony's mother, and Jarrell Jerome playing Anthony, and Bobby Cannavale and Don Cheadle and Michael Pena. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, so we have a really terrific cast, and the film looks great so far. And so it was so devastating to have it,
Yeah.
stop. And it's just, I mean, for a first-time director, I think it's probably not a great idea. It's like to have months between the first third of it and the second two thirds. We'll find out. I mean, um, we'll find out what that brings to the film, but um, luckily everybody's on board to keep going. I have a wonderful crew, and I'm hoping. I think I'm going to get them all back, but um, but it's been a really really fun experience, and it's been super difficult, but at the same time really rewarding and exciting.
Yeah.
Be able to be on that side of it. I've worked with so many unbelievably talented directors. I just, try and steal everything I can from every one of
Of
them.
course.
I had long talks with Michael Bay, long talks with Paul Greengrass, long talks with Ben Affleck, long talks with Michael Mann, asking a million questions, and hopefully some of that comes up on the screen. Um,
Yeah.
but
I was going to ask you how did you come to learn about the story, but I'm guessing is there a Nike connection because of Air?
No, actually, it's completely coincidental. The I was, after I did Argo, a bunch of people came to me and asked me if I was interested in directing, and I was. And then a friend of mine who's also a producer produced Gone Baby Gone and this movie Concussion that I did. He heard that I was looking for some. He brought me the story, and they had a screenplay, but it wasn't very good. So we brought a new screenwriter in and rewrote the script, and that was like 5 years ago. It took a long time
Right.
to get it going. And then I gave it to Ben when they started Artist Equity and asked if he would read it. I said, I'm not asking you to make it. I just want to know your opinion. And he loved it. And Matt Damon loved it, and everybody at the company loved it. So they decided to make it. And Ben did a rewrite on the script, and which was obviously terrific. And it was a very strange experience giving him notes, which was, he did a draft in the screenplay, and I had to give him notes, and he's doing them for all this time I've been doing his notes, and now he's doing mine. It was a very weird experience.
Right.
It's been a great partner. He and Matt have been amazing, really supportive, and I got that cast because of them. I mean, not because of me. I mean, it's a really great script and a great story, but I'm a first-time director, and I wouldn't have gotten those actors without those guys. So
Sure.
I certainly wouldn't have gotten Jennifer. And that's I mean, Jarrell Jerome who plays the lead, like I said, is an amazing actor, but Jennifer is a superstar. So Amazon bought the movie, and they've been really terrific as well. I mean, really good partners, and they did Air as well, so they knew Ben and knew the company, and felt pretty solid about it. So it's been great so far.
Excellent. Joel, one of the things that I'm always curious about, this is a question for both of you, but we'll start with Joel, is there a specific film that you said no to because of your conflicting schedule that you wish you had worked on? Not necessarily a regret, but just one of those things that you wish you were part of that film, whether it was successful or not.
Oh, that's a really good question. Well, I did say no to Transformers 1, but I don't know if I mean, I yeah, yeah.
Maybe we can go to Billy while you think about it.
Um, well, I got sent a script for Chicago, and I, th- I think it was an offer, but I'm not 100% sure it was an offer. Because I was halfway through the script, Gary Ross, who directed Pleasantville and Seabiscuit, it was after Pleasantville, before Seabiscuit. Gary Ross had a film that he was going to do, uh, an adaptation of a Noah Coward play, and I'm blanking on the name of it actually. And I turned to Chicago down to do that film, and then the film never got made. So that was disappointing. Again, there have been felt like I wanted to do The Town with Ben, and he wanted me to do it, and then I got caught in a weird thing with my schedule, and I ended up having to do a different movie, and I couldn't do The Town, and so that I really regretted not being able to do that. But at the same time, it also worked out. Like, I used to get really bent out of shape and freaked out about stuff like that, but now I feel like, it's a long career. Your career is a long time, and things happen for a reason. And like,
Yeah.
so it
Yeah.
doesn't, I miss things along the way, but it doesn't bother me anymore. I'm just happy to have what I have, and
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with that too, because there are certain things that I've missed because or certain things that I wanted to do and I couldn't do. And like I was supposed to do the Star Wars movie that Phil and Chris directed, and they
Mm.
ended up getting fired on that movie or quitting. And so it all worked out for me, I mean, all worked out for the best, really. Um, but yeah, I mean, I would say if there's a movie that goes away or a movie that I can't do, there's always something else coming and something
Yeah.
else that's better, more fun, and I'm happier to be on.
I think the key thing is that both of you sort of said is sometimes losing something helps you gain something down the road, whether it comes in a form of another project or time with family or anything else, could be health. And it's
Mhm.
tough for sure. And it, I sort of wanted to sort of wrap up with one more or two more questions with both of you guys. Is that what currently I know you guys edit on Avid, which is the industry software, and I've done editing on the old Final Cut, Premiere, Avid, and DaVinci Resolve, and now Avid has been sold to I think another company, and it's still obviously going to be around. But do you feel as an editor ever with the rise of not necessarily in Hollywood as much, DaVinci Resolve. Do you feel there might be some sort of a shift over or split in some capacity from an editor's standpoint? Or would you like that to see that, or you're happy where your world is right now?
I think there will be for sure. I think there will be for sure. The most a lot of people are still using the 2019 software, the Avid software, because they
Yeah.
like it better. Avid came out with a whole new, they
Yep.
redesigned their whole platform, and a lot of people aren't happy with it. And they pretty much haven't really done much in the last 20 years, really, Avid. And there hasn't been any breakthroughs or any new design in their software that makes things much different. It's kind of been the same software for as long as I've been using it, pretty much. I mean, they fixed things and they've fixed bugs and they've made tiny improvements, but there hasn't been like a like like a big, you know, epiphany or something, something that completely changed the way that people edit on digitally. I don't know if Resolve does that, but I think that's something that we need right now, and I think that's going to happen. I think that more and more people are shying away from Avid, and what happened when people switched over from film
Yeah.
to digital, it started out with commercials. It started out with music videos and smaller things, and then it moved into television, and then it moved into features. And I think that's kind of what's happening right now with the DaVinci Resolve and with also a Premiere. People, and also a lot of the film schools use Premiere. They don't use Avid. They're not. If you talk to a film student, they'll say, "Oh yeah, I know Premiere, but I don't know Avid." So I think it's going to happen. I don't know when, but I think um, a couple of big movies, if they start cutting on a different platform, then it'll just start, it'll take over. At least that's my opinion.
You
Yeah,
know, it was
Bill.
funny when I did Air. Ben wanted me to cut it on DaVinci Resolve,
Mm,
and I met with them, and I met with an edit. I talked to Pamela Martin, who had helped out on a movie that was cut on Resolve, and they both or they didn't the people at Resolve didn't seem, you just tell it wasn't ready for a feature, and then confirmed by Pam Martin and her assistant that there's a lot. It'll be there one day, but right now I don't know what your experience was, but you know the the editing itself and how you my friend of mine is Brett Reed, actually, who is cutting my movie, has been sort of experimenting with it, and it isn't quite there for feature film editing, and in terms of having multiple editors and assistants on the same storage, and speaking to the sound editors, and speaking to the interfacing with the sound editors and the music editors, and the finishing houses. It's really not there.
mm,
But the whole idea of being able to do like visual effects and color timing and everything all in the same thing, I think is amazing. And plus, you can cut a really high resolution, you can flick back and forth between resolutions. So I think that whole idea is really appealing, and I hope it happens faster, because it's still not ready. I mean, this guy Brett, who I mentioned before, is he's experimenting with it now, and that's about a year and a half after we've done Air, and it's still not improved enough,
yeah,
um, to really be for it just creates, it solves a lot of problems, but it creates even more.
yeah,
But
yeah,
like to what I was
yeah.
saying, Avid is just like it's getting worse, not better. But they just actually, the 2023 upgrade, they just came out with they have something now called Avid Classic.
I know, I heard about
Have the
that.
same interface you had on the old version, which
Yeah.
is because I've had to go in my Avid that I'm working on now and like set it up as close as I could to the old way, because I don't find the improvements, they go sideways. They don't go forward.
And have
It's
you tried
different,
the
but not
title
better.
tool? Have you
What's
tried the
that?
title? Have you tried the title tool? It
Title,
just it's a
it's
joke.
Yeah,
Oh,
no, we had the guy
sorry.
Matt Fury from Avid in the cutting room last week, and everybody in the cutting room, all the editors, all the assistants, Ben, were hammering him about the title tool, like, because they took something that worked fine and ruined it.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's what happened with, I remember with Final Cut back in 2010 when they announced the new one. Everybody was so excited. I remember I was even there for the launch. And then it just kind of like people switched to Premiere, including myself. And now Premiere, like the entire Adobe suite, not for studios, it's not really expensive. Paying $70 a month for whatever it is, 60 or $70 a month, as opposed to DaVinci. I think it's like 299, and that's it, like one-time fee. I think that's one of the reasons that people at the, base or medium level are switching to that more so from cost standpoint, but also I find Premiere. I edited two of my features, or co-edited two of my features on Premiere, and it crashed all the times. And
Mhm.
now DaVinci, I'm working on my next feature, and it hasn't given me any issues. I wanted to do it on Avid, but I just find DaVinci's interface is a little bit more convenient for my liking as opposed to Avid. Uh,
Mhm.
but uh, but yeah, we'll see. I do think DaVinci has come a long way in the last 10 years or even 5 years.
Yeah,
So it'll be
sure.
interesting.
I'd love to be able to do all that in the same thing, and in the same machine, and it would just make our jobs easier, and we'd have more control over what the product looks like, like be able to tweak the color timing in a way. The Avid color timing thing is just, not great. And Um, so it's like the film I'm working on now is obviously like I say, a documentary, and a lot of the stuff's like, some of it's shot with a commercial camera, so it's like, they aim towards a window and the density changes all over the place. So it's
Yeah,
like, and it's you can't really fix it because you can't defeat the color timing that's already on there. So it would be nice to have control over stuff I felt like I should have had control over, 10 years ago, but hopefully they get there soon.
right.
Yeah, I would like to say though, I was around, I'm sure Bill, you definitely were around when everything switched over from film to Avid, and it went, switched over from film to digital, and the technology at the time was growing. It was in its infancy, and it was getting better and changing. And for me, I don't know about for you because I was an assistant, so it was just super exciting. It was really exciting because it was all new. I was learning, I was learning about different technical aspects of computer editing, and also bringing, because I knew video editing and I knew film editing, so I brought those both together to do digital editing, and it was an exciting time. There was a lot happening. There was movies that were, there was a lot of problems and a lot of issues, and you would have to get little patches, for your computer to make, for your software to make things work, and
Right.
but things were changing, and people were learning, and people were using this new technology, and then a feature would use it, and then a bigger feature would use it, and then there was competing systems. There was the Lightworks and the Avid and the Montage, and for me, that was an exciting time because it was just it was technology changing, breaking the system, changing the system, disrupting the system. Technology was doing that, the old film editing system. And I know it was hard and it took a while, but it's working. It got to work. And I wouldn't mind something again like that, something that just changes the way things are done and makes it better and makes it easier and makes it more exciting. Because at the time it was fun to be around during
Sure.
that time. Yeah.
That
Yeah, I
makes sense.
remember, I cut like two films, I think, on film, and then everything started changing over to digital. And I remember saying, I'm going to stay on film. I can do it just fine on film. I don't want to do the digital. I was scared of it. I was scared just editing in general, let alone having to learn a new thing. And then once I started using it, it was clear everything was, going to change. And when I started using it, it was like Joel said, it was
Yeah.
so groundbreaking. It was just so fun to be able to do things and make a million copies and try a million versions, and see the dissolve, see basic dissolves and fades even
Right.
in real time, and then have to send it out, and send the film out and get an optical made, and all that stuff went away, and being able to do the sound work and add and so much more sound work and music work, it made it really fun, a lot more fun and less tedious than before. So it didn't take long to fall in love with it, but like
Yeah.
we did heat on the Lightworks,
Mm.
and it was too much film for the machine. We did it, but it was a nightmare. I mean, we just had so many problems, and it was just, the assistants didn't organize it well, and crashing, and one editor couldn't work for like 3 weeks, and we finally figured out it was because he had a halogen lamp plugged in to the same outlet that the light where it was some crazy thing, like it was drawing too much power. It was like, I mean, all the little things you're just trying to run around and chase and figure out. It was, it was, like a lot of technology, so it wasn't quite ready, but you're using it anyway. And then, so you have to sort of figure out all the workarounds, and, so it was a lot of fun and frustrating at times, but it was also fun. And it made, when we, like I said, on Heat, we were cutting on the Lightworks. And at one point, Michael Mann said, I'm sick of this computer, and let's go back and work on film for a minute, because we had all the film printed, and let's work on film, and like, we'll do that for a while. And we worked on film literally for like 4 hours one day, and he was like, "Okay, let's go back to let's go back to my words. I can't. It's too slow." So
Yeah, when I was on when I was on True Lies, we had three editors. The systems wouldn't talk to each other. we had the RMAGs only held what 500 megabytes. So we had 74 RMAGs that had all on these shelves, and we could only play about 20 minutes at a time, I think, or maybe less than that. And so I was in charge of all the Avids. I was kind of helping all the editors, and every time Jim Cameron would come in, you'd have to shut the entire system down and to put in a new sequence. So every time you had to switch the RMAX, you had to shut the system down, and then it felt like it took forever for it to start to boot back up while Jim's sitting there, waiting.
Yeah.
And you're always just waiting for him to just get mad and get frustrated because it's slow. And he never really did. He got mad about other things and frustrated about other things, but he was always really patient with the technology. But
Yeah.
it was scary. It was scary being the guy that, if something goes wrong, they all look at me. So,
It's funny you guys both mentioned about the technology evolving at the time, and I think we're at that same spot now with AI, right? Which is what all this picketing strike is about. And I've seen, I don't know if you guys have seen this. Um, I saw this on Instagram somewhere. So there's a plugin apparently. I haven't seen the results being that great, but the fact that it's in early stages where it will recognize three camera shot on a timeline and it would play it back automatically and it will start cutting it by itself. Now that to me was scary as hell, but at the same time was very fascinating, and I wonder how that will play into the world of post-production, if it does, in a very deep way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm scared about that too. I'm scared they're going to be, software where they say just cut the film from the point of view of this character. Boom, in 20 minutes it's out. It's done. I don't know what, I hadn't heard about what you said. I don't know what the state of that is, and it is scary, but I don't think, I'm not that worried about it now because I don't think, first of all, I don't think the technology is quite there to do
Yeah.
really cut film. Um, Strangely enough, I was talking to a friend of mine who's an agent at CAA who's, trying to do what he can to try and get the strike settled. He said the writers aren't worried about AI as much as the public, as much as the media says. They want to have it, a human must write it, is in the contract, but they're not. They're more worried about like the nuts and bolts, the kitchen table stuff. They're much more worried about the residuals and maybe to feed their families and that kind of thing. They're not as freaked out about the AI as according to him, freaked out about the AI as the media is making it. It's not what their
Interesting.
big sticking points are.
Because I've seen a
but
lot of interviews with the actors, especially not the writers, where they specifically
The actors
talk
are
about
terrified.
AI. Yeah, actors. I think actors are more. I was watching a video of Sean Austin. He was saying the exact same thing, that it's possible. I mean, I even think, like, you're right about editors and post production or even cinematography being not at that stage yet. But if things are moving fast as they are, I think we're probably within the 10 years of realm where that might start to happen.
It's like, as somebody said to me a couple of weeks ago, that technology always wins. They and everybody will have to adapt. I mean, that's just it's going to happen. I mean, you can't.
Exactly.
There's no way to
Exactly.
stop
I
it.
think I think of it as one of those, I don't know which episode, but either a Star Trek episode or one of those old Twilight Zone episodes where there's a computer and the computer's running everything and it's so smart, but it doesn't have a spirit, it doesn't have a soul, and it just can't do it. And computers will never be able to. They don't have they'll never have a brain like a human has. They could probably think like a human, but they don't have the soul that a human has, so that they
The
could,
heart. Yeah.
be creative, the heart and the soul. And yeah, I think I'm gonna go back and look at some of those old Star Trek or Twilight Zone episodes, because I know there's one that has this exact same
I
story.
think it's Twilight Zone.
Was it
I
a
think
Twilight Zone?
there's an episode, and I don't know if you're talking about TNG. Are you talking about TNG or the Next Generation, the Star Trek?
No, no, I'm
Oh,
talking about the original
oh,
Star
the
Trek.
original one.
Okay,
Yeah.
so there is an episode in TNG where there's a character named Berkeley. I don't know if you remember Barkley or Berkeley. He used to have a small guest role in one of the episodes. He actually became the computer of the Starship Enterprise, and he controls everything. And it just kind of
Oh,
becomes like
interesting.
the whole AI approach. And I forget the episode, but there was a whole episode on that. But moving on from AI, I just want to ask you guys one more question, and I know you have to go. Which director that you haven't worked with that you would love to work with, and why?
Go ahead, Billy.
I needed a minute.
Oh wait, Billy Goldenberg. No,
Why? That's the tone of that why is why. Um, I've been lucky that I've worked with some of like I remember several years ago I was thinking I'd love to work with Paul Greengrass, and then I did. So I was like, oh well, I got that one, check that off. Um, I don't know. I mean, I obviously the easy answer is like Martin Scorsese.
Mm.
Uh,
Hmm.
but like it would be interesting to work for like those guys who did everything everywhere all at once. I mean, like I don't know them really, but like some of the younger directors who are really doing things that are outside the box would be really fun to do, but um, I really wanted to cut Maestro, with Bradley Cooper, that Bradley Cooper directed, um, only because he's really good friends with Ben Affleck, and I met him at Ben's house one time, and I was shocked, but I was so impressed how he's so smart, like really intelligent, and like incredible vision for cinema, and I thought, wow, that's I'd love to cut one of his movies, and I unfortunately didn't get to, but but he seems like I like working with nice people. And he seems like a nice guy, and he seems collaborative, and I think that was when I really I'm a fan of Leonard Bernstein, so I would like to have done that film. But again, like it's not a like
I get it.
jealous thing. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like that'd have been nice because it seems like a cool project. But I don't know. What about you,
Well,
Joel?
Well, I was just thinking while you were talking. I think that what you said, just working with nice creative people, that's huge. That's really big, and I'd like to continue doing that. But if current directors, I would say maybe Chris Nolan, because it'd just be interesting to see how he approaches working on movies, because he cuts on film, which is interesting. So that would, and I think he's a good director. I'd like to work with him. Um, other other directors, again, it's someone who's talented and nice. I I'm a huge fan of classic movie directors, but they're not living anymore, so I can't work with them. But yeah, I'm kind of blank. Nothing really, no one else really comes to mind now.
right.
But just uh, nice, talented people is what I'm interested in.
No, that makes sense. And on that note, I think one thing I'm sure you guys have seen about Bradley Cooper. What was it called? Inside Actor Studio. Have you seen that episode where he was a guest before he became an actor?
Oh, I
He's
saw one where he
the
was
odd
asking Robert De Niro questions. Oh, yeah.
question, yeah, yeah. And then how he became one of the guests eventually. I mean, it just goes to show that how if you keep working at it, and he's a very intelligent guy. I mean, what's his film that he directed with Lady Gaga? I always forget the
Yeah.
name of that film.
Stars Born, yeah.
Yeah, that such a simple, but what an amazing film, and the performance and direction and everything. Truly a talented guy for sure.
Yeah.
I hope that you get to work him in his future film, and I hope Joel, you get to work with maybe an AI former director
Yeah,
from the '60s.
that would be that'd be amazing. John
Well,
John Ford. That'd
there
be
you go.
amazing.
There you go. Well, perfect. Thank you so much, guys. Anything you want to add? I mean, I had a great time chatting with you. I hope this time was useful for you guys too, just to
That
talk
was
about
fun.
what you guys do.
I got to hear
Great.
stuff about Joel I didn't know.
Wonderful.
Uh,
I would love to chat with you guys again sometime down the road about other projects, maybe individually. If you guys are interested, I'll reach out to your agent and
no,
we can do
yeah,
that.
let us know.
Truly had a great time. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Okay. See you.
Pleasure.
See
Take
ya.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye. See you, Joel.
Good to see you, Colin.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and comment. And do come back for another episode. Until then, have a great day.